Hello, friends. We will now have Swami Atmarupananda's talk on the secret of work.
Thank you, Mataji, and good to be back with you. Before I begin with the secret of work, I wanted to illustrate an important point, a general important point in Vedanta, whatever path we're following in Vedanta, or in any religious path, by referring to one of the many beautiful things that Swami Atmarupananda said as I was listening and reflecting on his words. The point that I want to illustrate is the importance of repetition and the importance of going deeply into the ideas. There are not that many ideas that are central to Vedanta, whether the path of knowledge or the path of devotion or the path of action or the path of meditation. Yes, we can go into great philosophical nitpicking, find all kinds of things to fret over, but the basic teachings are not that difficult. What's difficult is going deeply into the ideas, taking hold of them, taking them deeply enough so that they become our perception, they become our reality. And so that's why in Vedanta, as in any spiritual system, repetition is important, hearing again and again, thinking about that Shravana and Manana, hearing again and again, thinking of reading again and again, thinking about again and again, because we find we take a simple truth, we hold on to it, and it begins to reveal more and more meaning. It's not as we go along the spiritual path that we learn more and more things. It's that the few things that we learn, they take us deeper and deeper and reveal a more and more profound truth. So, just as the example, when Swami Atmarupananda was talking about how everything is object to consciousness, to awareness. The awareness is that which perceives, that which is aware, which knows. Everything is object to awareness. So as when we think about physical things, that's obvious. We see the physical world around us. We see the objects in front of us, as Swami Atmarupananda showed, the holding up glasses and the book and so forth. We understand at that level. As we go deeper with that, as that becomes a fundamental part of our way of thinking, not realization, but just we're still on the path. We haven't had the full flash of direct illumination of the Atman, but we're moving along the path, and that is becoming part of our way of thinking and perceiving. Then things like this we begin to perceive. Sometimes the mind is clear. And the mind is I'm thinking clearly and so forth. Sometimes I'm tired, sleepy, I'm confused. Sometimes we enter into a state where the mind is just confused and muddy and we can't figure anything out. That also is an object of perception. That state is an object of perception. So oftentimes we think that, well, my awareness is confused. No, your awareness is not confused. Your mind is in a state of confusion, and your awareness is revealing that state of confusion. That's an object of your awareness also. Of course, for practice, we try to attain and sustain a sattvic state of mind, a clear-minded state, because it's in the clear-minded state that we can practice and we can move forward best. But we also have to know that the clear-minded state, the sattvic state of mind, and the confused state of mind, the tamasic state of mind, both of those also are objects. Because when we're thinking in terms of awareness, we tend to confuse the awareness with our states of mind. Just as the awareness shouldn't be confused with the objects that we're perceiving, that we're illuminating with our awareness, so the states of mind also are. So anyway, that's just an illustration of any of the things that we're talking about today or tomorrow or in other classes on Vedanta, that as you take a particular point, and you internalize it, you begin to make it part of your way of thinking, you begin to see more and more profundity to the ideas. It begins to become not just a part of your thinking, but it becomes a door into a larger realm of understanding. So again, there's great importance to repetition in spiritual life. So that's not my topic. My topic now is the secret of work. And the secret of work is easy, at least easy to state. The secret of work is twofold, but these two things are aspects of the same thing. Non-attachment and motiveless action. Non-attachment and motiveless action. That's the secret of karma yoga. There's a connection, as I indicated, between the two, and we'll come to that connection in just a moment. So first, let me say a little bit about motive first. Non-attachment is something that many of us can come to some understanding of. Practicing it is much more difficult, but we come to some understanding. So let me take a tangent off of that for a moment also to illustrate a larger point with non-attachment. In spiritual life, much of our spiritual life is correcting our thinking. That's why in Vedanta society, it sometimes seems like, well, the Swamis just go on talking and talking and talking and talking. When are we going to get down to spiritual life? That is a major part of spiritual life. Correcting your thinking, learning how to think. So you hear things like what's being spoken of here today, and you think about it, you try to internalize it, you begin to watch your own experience and compare it to what you've heard, and you begin to change your ways of thinking and so forth. That's a very important part of learning. And so, coming back to non-attachment, we have some idea of non-attachment. It's not too difficult to get some beginning working knowledge of non-attachment. And we have to learn, of course, that it doesn't mean apathy. It doesn't mean, who gives a damn? I don't care about all of that stuff. No, it doesn't mean that. It means not injecting the tentacle of selfishness and personal attachment into everything, being able to see the world objectively and not to connect yourself to everything. That is, identifying yourself more with consciousness rather than or identifying yourself with consciousness rather than with the objects. So we can get a general understanding of non-attachment without much difficulty. As I said before about the states of the mind becoming objects of our perception also, so with non-attachment, as we deal with non-attachment, we try to practice non-attachment, it begins to open up a larger and larger world to us, and our understanding goes deeper. And so again, there's Shravana, hearing about the truth, and then Manana, the long process of Manana, that is correcting our thinking. And that is extremely important in whatever spiritual path we follow, because our perception follows our thinking. We think according to habitual patterns, and our thinking has caused us to perceive the world in a certain way. If we want to change our perception, we have to change our thinking. So again, non-attachment and motiveless action, as I said, non-attachment is relatively easy to begin to understand the outlines of what non-attachment mean. Motiveless action, that's very difficult. Why? Because all of our action is motivated. If I get up in the morning, I find that I have to have a reason to get up in the morning. That's a reason to get up in the morning is a motivation to get up in the morning. So how can I act without a motive? If I don't have a motive, then why would I get up in the morning? It may be that I get up just because I don't want to be fired from my job. It may be I get up at a certain time because I want to have time to meditate before I have to begin my job, before I have to go to my job. It may be that I get up in the morning because I know I have to fix breakfast for the family. It may be that I get up in the morning just because I've been lying in bed so long that I'm tired of lying in bed and I want to change, so I get out of bed if I have no other reason to get out of bed. But I have some reason for getting out of bed. I have a reason for going to get something to eat. I'm hungry and I want to satisfy that. Or I want to taste something new that I've bought and haven't tasted yet. Everything that we do, there is a motivation behind it. And our motivations are generally personal. Even if it's for helping another person, it's because I want to help the other person. That doesn't make it selfish, but it means that there is a motivation behind things. So there's a motive behind all conscious action. And our motivation generally is because of attachment. So that's the connection between attachment and motive, or non-attachment and motiveless action. My motive to do something is because I want something out of the action. And that's because I'm attached to something. It may just be an attachment to my self-concept of who I am. I am a good person, and my image as a good person is important to me. And it's important that other people know that I am a good person. And so it can even be something like that, which is not ignoble. That's not a bad thing. But it is that I want people to think well of me, and so I do this. Again, I'm not saying it's better to let people think badly of you. No, I'm not saying that this is a bad thing. I am saying that it is because I'm attached to a particular self-image that I want to continue to project. I want to protect it for myself and for the public. And so I do action. Or, of course, many of our actions are for much less noble things than just keeping a noble self-image. And so, again, whatever I do, there's a motivation behind it. If I practice meditation, I'm not going to practice meditation unless I have a motive for doing so. It can be just when I really don't want to meditate. It can be just that my teacher told me to meditate every day, and so I just have to do it. I don't want to do it, but I just have to do it. It can be, I really don't want to sit for meditation today, but I know that, or I've heard and understood that eventually the only way to control the mind is to be regular in my practice. So I don't want to, I really don't feel like it, but I'm going to sit. And so that's my motivation. So every action, every conscious action, I don't mean swatting at a mosquito, which can be an unconscious impulse. Before you even feel the mosquito, one hand is swatting at the other hand where the mosquito is biting. Other than such impulsive actions, which are from spontaneous reactions of the body, conscious actions have an intention behind them. And in the beginning of spiritual life, intentionality is very important. That's why in the puja, we begin a puja with a statement of intention. In a simple daily puja, the intention stated is very simple. In our Ramakrishna tradition, there's a formula that we repeat at the beginning of puja where we say that I'm doing this to please Sri Ramakrishna and for the growth of knowledge and devotion and for the welfare of the devotees of the community of Ramakrishna, etc. And in a big puja, you make a sankalpa, that is an intention, very deliberately, where you mention the date and all of the other astronomical features going with the date, the tithi and the rashi and so forth, Indian concepts of the position of the stars and so forth at that moment. And you say more exactly what it is that you're going to do and why you're doing it. That's because in the spiritual life, intentionality is very important. Sankalpa, intention, making an intention. Ramana Maharshi says that the jnani is one who makes no sankalpa. And so this is an example in spiritual life of one of those times when we find that what the person of perfection does seems to be the opposite of what we're doing. But the reason why for us intentionality is important is because everything that we do now has an intention behind it because without an intention, we make no conscious effort for as long as we have the sense of being an agent, a karta, a doer, someone who is responsible for carrying out an action. Intentionality is very important. In karma yoga, or karma yoga is a method of going beyond that, but we go beyond it by first using the fact of intentionality itself. And so in spiritual life, we have to learn to refine our motive first. Acting without motive right now is like saying the spiritual realization is to be in a desireless state, so stop desiring. Well, just try it. As soon as you say, okay, I heard that to attain illumination, all you need to do is to be desireless. So I'm not going to desire anything right now, or ever in the future. I'm not going to desire anything. Well, try it. It's a good intention, and it is an intention. But you find that as soon as you tell yourself not to desire anything, then that's when desires begin to fill your mind. You think of all kinds of things you want to have. It's like when you sit for meditation and you understand that you're supposed to sit still and not move around. And this is in the beginning, when you first begin the practice of meditation. You're trying to sit still. They say, okay, now even if I have an itch, I'm not going to scratch it. And as soon as you tell yourself that, every place in your body starts itching. So eventually you get over it, and just telling yourself, no, I'm just going to sit still, you can do it. But in the beginning, that doesn't work. And so in the beginning, telling yourself to be desireless, that stimulates even more desire. Trying to be intentionless, it doesn't work. We have to work our way there. So the Gita says in the second chapter, as I said in the first part, the second chapter mainly deals with self-knowledge. There are other themes that come up, but sort of central to it is self-knowledge. And that's why it's called the Sankhya Yoga Nama Dvitiyo Dhyayaha, the second chapter known as the yoga of knowledge. Actually, Sankhya Yoga, but in the Gita, Sankhya Yoga means the yoga of knowledge. And so in the second chapter, there is a verse that is the heart of karma yoga, and which tells the secret of work. And so there Sri Krishna says, verse 47 of chapter 2, Karmanyevadhikaraste ma paleshu kadachana ma karma palaheturabhu ma te sangostva karmani. So this is one of the most famous verses in the Gita. In fact, back in the 1970s, the government of India put out a Gita stamp. I still have a copy of one. I use it as a marker in my matchbook size Gita from Gita Press. It's actually the size of a small matchbox. The whole Gita, all 700 verses in this small little book. I use it as a bookmark, a Gita stamp. And that Gita stamp had, it was a red crimson background with a gold image of the chariot on the battlefield with Sri Krishna teaching Arjuna. And it had this first half of the verse that I just quoted, Karmanyevadhikaraste ma paleshu kadachana. Karmanyevadhikaraste, yours is the right to work alone, eva. Yours is only the right to the work. Ma paleshu kadachana, never to the fruits of action. You have no right to the fruits of action, only to the work itself. Ma karma pala hetu urbhur, don't to become one who is seeking to produce fruits of action. Don't be one who is, that is, I'm doing this for these fruits. Don't be the producer of the fruits of action. And neither let your attachment be towards non-action. So as he says later, and as I'll come to a verse in chapter 3, early in chapter 3, where he says that you can't be actionless for a moment. So he's not saying stop working, but he's saying yours is the right only to do the work, not to the fruits thereof. Don't be a producer of the fruits of action. That sounds impossible. And taken too literally for us right now, it is impossible. but it's not impossible to move in that direction and eventually to come to that. And so this is the great secret of karma yoga, and it's the great difficulty in understanding both karma yoga and the spirit of the Gita, because it's telling us that yours is the right to the work and not to the fruits. But every motive for action is, I'm doing this because I want this fruit. So it's telling us to be non-attached and to be motiveless. And I said the two are intimately connected. They're looking at the same thing from two different angles, but they're the same thing from two different angles. So asking us to be active, to work, but not to be attached to the fruits of our work. So how in the world could we do that? One of the questions I said in the previous session, in my previous session, I said I would come back to the same thing that the questioner was asking about. That is, if we're doing work for money, can that possibly be karma yoga? Yes, every action can be karma yoga. Sitting for meditation can be karma yoga. Buying and selling can be a karma yoga. Hiring your services out can be karma yoga. Doing charitable work is karma yoga. Everything that you do, including even sitting for self-inquiry, can be karma yoga. Karma yoga is, again, it doesn't matter what the field of your action is, it matters how you do it. And so how can we, again, attain to this where we're not expected to take the fruits of our action? Or, again, as I said in the previous session, if I go to work all week and then the boss wants to pay me for my labor and I say, no, I'm not working for the fruits of my action, I'm working just for the work itself, the boss will be delighted and my family will starve. And so that's not what this statement means. It means that you do your work. If there's pay involved, you accept the pay, but that is not where your attention is. That is not where your heart is. That's not the motivation behind your work. So in the beginning, we have to learn to refine our motive before we can go beyond motive itself. If you want to get a beautiful, for us, it would be a poetic understanding, but that's very important and very valuable. A beautiful poetic understanding of what the state of motiveless action is. Read Swami Vivekananda's lecture, The Goal, where he says, I have no goal. I have no purpose to accomplish. When you read that, you are listening to the words of a person who had attained to that state and is expressing that state, especially in the latter part of the lecture. The whole lecture is beautiful, but the latter part of the lecture, you get this sense of one who is completely free from any motive, any purpose whatsoever. For us, as practice, we have to refine our motive, and then we'll be able to move beyond motive altogether. So how do we do that? First, we have to understand what Sri Krishna says at the beginning, not the very first, but chapter 3, verse 5. Nahi kaschik kshanamapi jatu tishtatya karma krit. No one can remain without action, even for a moment. Karyate hyavasha karma sarva prakriti gunaihi. Everyone is forced by nature to be active every moment. You can't sit still even for a moment. You think, I'm going to sit on the couch, I'm not going to do anything. I can give up work, that's easy. I don't like to work. I'm just going to sit here. I'm not going to do anything. You're working. You've made a determination, you've made an intention, I'm going to sit here. And to prove my point to the other people I just said that to, then whenever the idea comes, well, I think I'll go get something to eat. No, I'm going to sit here because I told them I'm going to sit here. I'm going to show that I can sit here. I'm working the whole time. I'm working the whole time. I'm making a determination. I'm holding myself here. Eventually, of course, a time will come when I have to get up. So whether I'm sitting, whether I'm moving, I'm working all of the time. And so first understand that in this dynamic universe, there is no sitting still. Even when we're sitting still, we're not still. And so this is literally true. We don't have a choice between action and no action. In this dynamic universe, there is only action. So first understand that, then understand the results of attachment, and that the Gita speaks plenty about in indirect terms. It talks in terms of non-attachment, but from that we get the idea of the results of attachment. The results of attachment are bondage and misery, fear, sorrow, all of that. Yes, we certainly get joy out of our attachments too, but those joys are tied to fear and sorrow as well. We can't have the positive without the negative, because they are part of the same package. They're part of the same thing. So understand the nature of attachment. Look at your life. See how it is that attachment is at the base of your experience, and how it is constantly causing you bondage, how that is the source of bondage itself. Each yoga has its own view of what is the binding part of experience and what is liberating for us. And so in karma yoga, the central binding factor that karma yoga points to is attachment. And so understand the nature of attachment and understand the value of non-attachment. Then find a higher attachment. Find a higher attachment. Now, in the path of knowledge, they won't usually explain it this way, but looking at the path of knowledge from the, and their way of explaining it is correct from the standpoint of knowledge, but looking at it from the standpoint of karma yoga, when I try to hold to the I am, when I try to hold on to the sense of consciousness that I am the conscious self, I am the Sakshi, I'm not what I'm observing, I'm changing my point of attachment. I'm changing my point of attachment because I haven't yet realized the self. If I realize the self, there's no question of attaching myself to anything. Another way to think of it, and the way that a jnani would usually express it, and which is true, and the right way to express it from the standpoint of jnana, I'm changing the locus of my sense of self from this body and mind to consciousness, to the Sakshi, to awareness. But from the standpoint of karma yoga, I'm giving up the attachment, one form of attachment, and attaching myself to awareness. Because in our present state, again, we're like the inchworm. The inchworm moves from thing to thing. How? It's standing on a leaf and it's looking for something else to attach to it. Finally touches another leaf, and then it can let go here and move over to there and continue moving on its way. It has to be attached to something. And that is our condition now as in our experience as individual beings. We have to have a point of attachment. And so we refine our attachment. Or it doesn't have to be through the path of knowledge. As I said, karma yoga can work with any of the yogas. It can be through God. Let me change my point of attachment from thinking of me as this phenomenal person with a body that is the body and mind, with all of my things and all of my loved ones and all of my comforts and all of that, to thinking of myself as related to God. My central relationship no longer to things and to circumstances, not even to the body and mind, but my central attachment being to God. So changing my point of attachment to God. So first, understand that we have to refine our motive, find that I have to act. So karma yoga is not about stopping action. It's about changing my motivation and my attachment, first by refining them, finding higher motives, more unselfish motives, more spiritual motives. I'm going to meditate. And yes, this is a limited motivation, but we have to work with limited motivations along the path because that's all we have. I'm going to meditate because it is going to make me a better person. I'm going to meditate because I want to realize God. I'm going to meditate because I want to realize the self. I'm going to meditate because I'm not happy. Life is not sufficient as it is now. I want to get to a better place. I want to come to enlightenment. Those are all motivations, and they are all personal motivations. I am going to meditate because of this. So refine your motives and learn to shift your attachment from ordinary things to something higher. Find a higher attachment and higher motive. I learned a great lesson about karma yoga from Swami Swarupananda. He was a disciple of the Holy Mother, great Swami, the one who founded the Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Calcutta, Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture in Gold Park, Calcutta. And on his 90th birthday, he came to San Diego, where I was living at that time. He arrived on his 90th birthday and stayed with me for 5 days. I took care of him. And I would take him out to see sights and things around San Diego. San Diego was a wonderful place to show guests because there were so many things to see and do. And he was a wonderful guest to show around because he was interested in everything. So one day we returned from one of our tours in time for me to fix him lunch. And when we came back to the center, there was a devotee at that time named Antoinette. She would come every Tuesday, and this was a Tuesday. She would come every Tuesday morning and clean the public parts of the ashram. That was her service. She couldn't come to the lectures and classes because her husband wouldn't let her, but he was gone on Tuesdays, and so she could come and clean the center. So that was her way of keeping contact, and it was a wonderful service for us. So the Swami and I come back into the center, and Antoinette is there cleaning, and so I say, "Oh, Maharaj, I want to introduce you to Antoinette, one of our wonderful devotees. She comes every Tuesday and has done this for years. Her service is to clean the public parts of the ashram." And so he walks up to her and says, "Oh, I'm so happy to meet you. I'm so glad to meet you. I'm so glad to hear about the service that you do. But always remember, it's not what you do that's important. It's who you are becoming through the doing. It's not what you do that is important. It's who you are becoming through the doing." Now see the difference here between strict karma yoga and strict jnana yoga. Again, the two can be combined easily. But in karma yoga, you're using action as a tool for transformation. Action as a tool for transformation. And the Swami that opened my eyes to a whole new realm of karma yoga. It solved a great mystery for me about karma yoga. And that mystery was about motivation. It's not what you do that's important. It's who you are becoming through the doing. That's one of the secrets of work. It's a central secret of work, and it's one of the secrets of motivation and non-attachment. No, it's not the highest truth, but it's the path to get to the highest truth. That is, when I'm working, karma yoga, and Sri Krishna says in the Gita, it doesn't matter what you do, all work, all action is a means to come to reality. So it doesn't matter what you do, it's using work as a tool for transformation, transforming consciousness. All of the yogas are about the transformation of consciousness. Karma yoga is not about work. It's not about what you do and how much you do. It's about transforming your consciousness, and work happens to be the tool that you use in karma yoga. So if you have this understanding that it's not what you do, but who you're becoming through the doing, then that, if you hold on to that one, if that's the only thing you take from the talks on karma yoga this weekend, then you've gotten a great aid in your spiritual life, because you find that when you're working, how do I work without thinking about the fruits of my action? Simply by recognizing that it's the work that I'm doing which is transforming me, and that's what's important. Sri Krishna says again and again things like sukha dukkhe same kritva labha labho jaya jayo, making happiness and misery the same, attainment and non-attainment the same, success and failure the same, making all those the same, siddhi siddhyo samo bhutva, becoming the same in success and failure. Karma yoga is not about succeeding. It's about understanding that success and failure are the same to the karma yogi. Not in the sense that, who gives a damn? I don't care about this work. Let it get it over with. Hoy jabe, to use the Bengali phrase. Swami Atmarupananda used to say that as long as people hold on to this hoy jabe philosophy, that somehow that's enough. That's enough. It's good enough. Don't bother with it. As long as people hold to that philosophy, there's no hope. So karma yoga is not that. Karma yoga is you respect the work because you know it's a means of transformation. So you respect it. You do it with respect. But whether you succeed or fail, that's not the point, because you learn as much from from failure as you learn from success. In fact, you often learn more from failure. When I was in San Diego in 1993, it was this 1993, the centenary of the Parliament of Religions year. I decided I wanted to start some service project, and so I decided to start going to Mexico and helping with the schools on the border in Mexico, in Tijuana. And I found that I couldn't speak Spanish, they couldn't speak English, and I wasn't much help. So I started studying Spanish. So I eventually went through all of the 2 different junior colleges, took all of the courses on Spanish they had, and then went to San Diego State to take Spanish courses, more advanced classes. I found that I had been out of school for many, many years, for decades. By that time, I was already in my 40s, mid 40s. And so I had always been a good student when I was a student. And so when I would study very hard for the tests and everything. When I got a perfect score, okay, I got a perfect score, and then I would forget about it. If I made mistakes on the tests that I was given, then I would go back and see, now, what did I do wrong? Oh, I did this. I should have done this. This is not correct. This is correct. I learned far more when I got less than perfect scores on my test than when I got perfect scores. And that was a lesson to me also. Success and failure are the same to the karma yogi, not because I don't care, who gives a damn, get it over with, that's all. No, they're the same because we learn from both of them. And we, as Swamiji said, we learn more from our mistakes than our successes. We learn more from our failures than from our successes. So that is the way we begin to go beyond this preoccupation with the fruits of our action. And then we get the motivation is transformation, not I want to get this, that, and the other thing out of my work. Yes, that may be a practical consideration, but that's not the higher motivation of your work. Yes, you have to pay bills, so you need money to pay the bills, but that's not the central reason why you're doing work. As you're working, the central thing is, how can I do this so that it transforms my consciousness? You're driving down the street and someone cuts you off, and you start making signals with your hand and gestures, and you shout out the window and you rush in front of them to try to cut them off, to show them, why have I allowed that person to mess up my mind? Why have I allowed them to make me a person like them? No, if I'm doing the work as a means of transformation, somebody else acts like an idiot. Okay, let them act like an idiot. Why am I going to respond by becoming an idiot like them? Have I solved the problem by doing that? No. If I'm doing it as a means of transformation, I'm attentive to the way that I'm doing it and the way that I'm reacting to what's happening to me. So my time is long up. I've gone 10 minutes over the time into question and answers. So let me stop here and at least take a couple of questions if we can, as long as the time remains.
Swami, you said the actions as a tool to transform consciousness. Did you mean to say transform the mind here, or did you still mean consciousness?
Very good question. Very good question. Yes, I meant, of course, transform the mind. So I was using, and I don't like to do that. I'm glad you pointed it out, because I don't like to do that confusing terminology. And so I was using consciousness in the ordinary way that it is used in the West and in Buddhism. One of the reasons why Buddhism is so popular is that there's certain things like consciousness and everything is flux and there's nothing, no God and no self, there's only flux, that has made Buddhism acceptable to the scientific mind. And so the Buddhist idea of consciousness and the Western idea of consciousness are similar in that consciousness means the conscious mental processes. So I was using it in that sense, which I don't like to do, but I fell into it.
Non-attachment can be misconceived as being uncaring towards the other parties involved. How can one practice non-attachment yet not hurt the other party in due course?
That's extremely important. Yes, yes. Being non-attached means not being selfishly attached. First of all, and this is not part of the question, but it's part of the larger idea, non-attachment doesn't mean that not being engaged in the action. Swami Vivekananda said we have to have as much power of attachment as detachment. I have to be able to attach the whole of my mind to what I'm doing and be able to detach it at a moment. But non-attachment means not being selfishly attached. It doesn't mean not caring about the feelings of others. As a person becomes less attached, less selfishly attached, we become bigger. We begin to see that the feelings of others are as important as my feelings. And I begin to become more sensitive to the feelings of others. And so if I'm not sensitive to the feelings of others, it means there's something wrong within me that needs to be corrected deliberately, or it means there's something wrong with my practice. Because I should gradually, one of the signs of developing spirituality is I become more sensitive to the feelings and needs of others. Not in a personally attached way, because oftentimes we mistake our attachment to be sympathy for others, or we mistake our desire to be a busybody, injecting ourselves into the lives of others even when we're not wanted, and just causing other people grief because of our nosiness. We take that as a concern. No. Being unselfish means becoming sensitive to the needs and feelings of others. Then we won't inject ourselves unnecessarily into the lives of others because we're sensitive to what they need. That's a sign of spiritual growth.
How karma affects the appearance of awareness, which is not real?
How, and I'll just say, please.
How does karma affect the appearance of awareness, which is not real?
Karma it doesn't affect awareness. Karma takes place within awareness, but karma affects our state of mind. It's not that karma affects awareness. Awareness is the transcendent reality, that in which everything takes place, but which is unaffected by anything. But it's the state of our mind which is affected by karma. And so that's a statement of Swami Atmarupananda, taking that as an example. It is not what you do that's important, it's who you're becoming through the doing. Action, karma, work, activity affects the state of our mind. And so that means that I learn while I'm acting to watch the reactions of my mind. So again, karma yoga is a mental yoga, just like all of the yogas are mental. Karma yoga is not a physical yoga. We say in our centers that we're going to have Karma Yoga Day, and we have devotees come and do work for the ashram, and that's a good thing. But just calling it a Karma Yoga Day doesn't mean it's Karma Yoga. It's Karma Yoga if we are trying to do it as service and not for our own benefit, but as a service to the center. That's what makes it Karma Yoga. So that action as karma. We're not talking about the law of karma, though of course that's involved in everything, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about karma as action. That action, the motivation in my action, the way that I perform the action, my reactions to what happens during the action, all of that is shaping my state of mind. And so through action properly performed, I'm refining my state of mind so that the refined mind capable of perceiving higher spiritual truths, of feeling my identity with all beings, feeling the presence of the self. All of these things begin to become, all of these teachings of Vedanta, we begin to feel them in the sense, I don't mean emotionally feel them, and I don't mean sensory, in a sensory sense of feeling them, like with the tactile sense, but I mean we begin to intuit them. We begin to feel their reality long before we actually realize them. We begin to see how the whole universe, yes, is floating within my awareness, as Swami Atmarupananda was saying. Through karma yoga, through the refinement that comes through karma yoga, the greater unselfishness, the greater calmness that comes by controlling my reactions, learning how to control my mind by being mindful in what I do, the mind becomes highly refined. That is, the mind becomes more and more sattvic. And in the sattvic mind, spiritual perceptions come of themselves. And again, long before actual realization or visions of things and so forth, we begin to sense the reality of spiritual ideas. They become palpable realities to us. And so through karma yoga, through action properly performed, the mind becomes sattvic. We expand our sense of self because we're not selfish. We've expanded our mental horizons, the horizons of our being. And spiritual realities become realities to us.
Swami, if nothing attaches to the consciousness, as Swami Atmarupananda said, how does karma follow you from one life to another life?
Yes, karma phala, the law of karma, the process of karma, only operates as long as we have the sense that kartaham, bhoktaham. I am the doer and I am the enjoyer of experiences. Always remember that the Sanskrit word bhokta, enjoyer of experiences, doesn't mean enjoying pleasant experiences. It means the recipient of experiences. It means good and bad experiences. So it's not enjoying pleasant things. It means I am the experiencer and I am the doer. As long as we have that sense, we will be operating within the realm of karma. So there's no cheating the law of karma. If, however, through the path of knowledge, by thinking that I am the self, I eventually come to the point where I realize I'm not the doer. I am consciousness itself. This body and mind, they act through the gunas of Prakriti, as Sri Krishna explains so beautifully in the Gita. Then I'm free from the law of karma. Or if, as the Gita also explains, and this we'll deal with in the next session, my part of the next session, if I understand that that God is acting through me, I am not the doer, God is the doer. And then also I'm free from the sense of kartaham, I am the doer, bhoktaham, I am the enjoyer. And so in that way also the law of karma falls apart. Liberation is something that's a complex issue and it's often misunderstood. Liberation basically means freedom from the law of karma. If I'm freed from the law of karma, I am liberated. And that can come through devotional experience. It can come through experience of knowledge. Liberation doesn't necessarily mean nirvikalpa samadhi. That may be the highest state of enlightenment, and it's actually not even a state, but we call it a state by analogy. That may be the highest realization of ourselves as nothing but consciousness, transcendent consciousness. But for liberation, all we need, all within air quotes, we need is to be free from the sense of being the doer.
Swami, you have about a minute to answer this question. Refinement of motivation via karma yoga implies a deliberateness. Is it advisable to take on fewer activities to help with the deliberateness?
I'm sorry, I have to ask you to repeat it because the problem for me is that I'm hearing Mataji's voice here in the hall as well as over my earphone, and there's a lag between the two, so it's hard to. So I'll close my ear and just listen over the earphone. So please repeat it.
Refinement of motivation via karma yoga implies a deliberateness. Is it advisable to take on fewer activities to help with the deliberateness?
Yes, that's a good question. And in general, yes, if we can. There are people in circumstances where they can't take on fewer activities. And so, again, karma yoga can be practiced in any circumstance and whatever it is we have to do. But if we have the choice of limiting our activities so that we can be more deliberate in what we're doing, that's very good. Yes, then do that. Many people have the tendency to fill themselves with so much activity just because they don't like to be alone. They don't know what to do with themselves unless they're overly busy. In spiritual life, it's very important that we control that tendency of overcommitting ourselves so that we're so busy we really don't know what we're doing when we're doing anything. So yes, if you can, limit your abilities so that you can focus on what you're doing.
Thank you, Swami.